Welcome to Newsbrief.
It's Wednesday, June 11th, 2025.
And we're looking at some key events unfolding right now. Lots happening.
Absolutely. Politics, economy, tech. Quite a mix today.
Let's jump right in then, starting with politics here in the United States. There seems to be quite a bit of tension between President Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom.
Yes, that's definitely a major focal point, and it's playing out very visibly.
How so?
Well, mainly through the deployment of the National Guard and about 700 Marines as well to Los Angeles.
Right, and the reason given is the migration protests happening live.
Exactly. That's the official justification.
And California's response, not just words, I gather.
No, not at all. They've actually filed a lawsuit against the federal government over this deployment.
Wow. So this is really escalating that whole federal versus state authority issue.
It really is. It's become a classic constitutional clash playing out in real time.
And then there's the mention of the president possibly evaluating the Insurrection Act.
Yeah.
That sounds serious.
It is. Invoking the Insurrection Act is a very significant move. It essentially allows the president to deploy the military domestically to suppress civil disorder, even if the state objects.
Even over the governor's objections.
Potentially, yes. So just considering it signals a willingness to, potentially bypass state authority quite significantly.
And the language being used.
Yeah.
It's getting pretty heated, right? Calling protesters animals.
Yes, the rhetoric is certainly very strong. And that's alongside proposals like a mandatory year in jail for burning the flag.
Which is usually considered protected speech, even if controversial.
Right. So it suggests a very forceful approach towards these protests.
And it's not just L.A. We're hearing about federal tactical teams, the Beer Cats, getting ready for other cities.
That's right. Preparations apparently underway for potential deployment to places like Chicago, Philadelphia, D.C., New York. Major Democrat-run cities.
So the feeling is this tension could spread, or they're preparing as if it might.
It seems that way, a kind of nationwide readiness for potential unrest related to these issues.
Okay, shifting gears slightly but still in politics. Federal charges against a congresswoman.
Yes, Democratic Congresswoman Monica McClink. The reports say it stems from some kind of incident or confrontation she had at an ICE center in New Jersey.
So, again, tying back to immigration enforcement tensions.
Exactly. It shows how these political divides are now playing out directly in the legal arena, even involving elected officials.
And kind of an interesting side note, Elon Musk had to clarify some comments about Trump.
Yeah, apparently after criticizing a budget law, he felt he needed to backtrack slightly, suggesting he'd maybe gone too far.
Which just shows how sensitive the political climate is right now, doesn't it?
It really does. Even someone like Musk treads carefully.
Okay, let's move into some legal and cultural updates. The trial involving John Holmes, P. Diddy, there's been testimony.
Yes. An ex-girlfriend, using the alias Jane in court, has testified.
And a hurricane.
Reports suggest her testimony seems to align with what Cassie Ventura previously testified about regarding alleged forced sexual encounters.
It's obviously a very serious and sensitive case people are watching closely.
Absolutely. The legal process is bringing forward some very difficult allegations.
Let's circle back to the immigration protests, because they seem to be a major story. Still ongoing in Los Angeles.
Yes, for 6 days straight now, according to reports. That's quite sustained.
And it's led to a curfew downtown.
That's right. An 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew is in effect. This came after some disturbances and looting incidents.
Any specific places mentioned?
Stores like Adidas and Apple were reportedly affected. It highlights that while many protests are peaceful, there has been some disorder.
And arrests.
Yeah, around 200 arrests reported in Los Angeles so far. The situation is, complex.
And who's handling the protests directly on the ground?
Local law enforcement, LAPD, mounted police, and also the California Highway Patrol are the ones engaging with the protesters.
So distinct from the National Guard and Marines.
Yes, their role currently is primarily guarding federal buildings. Different mandates, at least for now.
But these protests aren't just an LA story, are they?
Not at all. We're seeing mobilizations in quite a few other cities.
Such as?
Well, in Chicago, there was a disturbing incident where a car apparently hit some protesters, injuring one woman, though the march itself was described as mostly peaceful.
That's alarming. What about elsewhere?
New York saw around 80 arrests near the immigration court. There were also events in Milwaukee, Atlanta, where there were reports of tear gas being used, D.C., Denver, which was described as more violent, Seattle, and Boston.
So really widespread.
Definitely. And the protesters are indicating they plan to continue. It shows a significant level of public mobilization on this issue.
A very visible reaction across the country. Okay, let's pivot to the economy. The overall picture still seems to be uncertainty.
Yeah, that's the recurring theme. Familiar issues like, tariffs and interest rates are still driving that feeling.
And for the U.S. specifically, the expectation is for policies to get tighter, more restrictive.
That seems to be the analysis, yes. Both potentially on tariffs, trade, and maybe linked to immigration policies as well.
And what does that usually mean for growth and inflation? That's the tricky part, right?
It really is. Restrictive policies can sometimes slow down growth a bit, but they can also, counterintuitively, push inflation higher. Think tariffs, raising import costs.
So you risk that difficult combination of slower growth and higher prices.
Exactly. Stagflation concerns. And the Federal Reserve is caught right in the middle of this.
Trying to figure out what to do with interest rates.
Precisely. They are apparently getting contradictory data. Some signs the economy is strong, others may be showing weakness. So it's genuinely unclear whether they should hold rates steady or start cutting. A real dilemma for them.
And another economic note, the U.S. reducing biodiesel imports.
Yes, significantly. This seems tied directly to changes in U.S. tax credits for biodiesel, policy changes impacting trade flows.
Okay. Looking internationally, there are some concerns about agriculture.
Yeah, particularly drought conditions in key farming areas in Russia, and also low humidity reported in parts of Germany and Poland.
What crops are mainly affected?
The main concern seems to be wheat. Issues in these major producing regions could potentially impact global supply and prices, something to watch, especially for food costs.
From fields to, well, the digital realm, artificial intelligence, still moving incredibly fast.
It really is, and it's moving into practical use cases very quickly. One example mentioned is the U.S. Department of State actually using AI now for personnel selection.
Wow, using algorithms to help hire diplomats, that's something.
It is, and financially the scale is just exploding. OpenAI's revenues are reportedly getting close to $10 billion a year.
10 billion? That's remarkable.
Absolutely. It just shows how deeply AI is embedding itself into government, into commerce.
But that kind of rapid integration must raise some big questions, too.
Oh, definitely. Huge questions around national security, technological competition between nations. Who controls this tech? How can it be misused? These are becoming really central issues.
A powerful tool with significant implications. Okay, let's shift gears for a bit and catch up on some sports highlights.
Sounds good. A bit of a breather.
Boxing first. A professional debut for someone called first-class aviator Craig Judy. Great name.
And a winning start for him. He won his debut fight in Tokyo by majority decision.
Excellent. Over to football or soccer, the UEFA Nations League final.
A dramatic one. Portugal beat Spain on penalties after it ended 2-2. Thrilling finish.
Nice for Portugal. Less good news for the U.S. men's national team, though.
Unfortunately, no. Another loss for them, 4-0 against Switzerland. That makes it 4 straight defeats, which is definitely a bit concerning.
Yeah, a tough run. Elsewhere, World Cup qualifiers are ongoing.
Yes, the South American qualifiers for 2026 are underway. Still early, but globally, only 7 teams have actually secured their World Cup spots so far.
Okay, basketball. NBA Finals.
Tied up 1-1. Oklahoma City Thunder took Game 2 against the Indiana Pacers, 115-108.
And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a big game for OKC.
He did. 34 points. A really impressive performance. The series moves to Indiana now, but OKC might have a bit of momentum after that win.
Okay, and quick WNBA result.
New York Liberty beat Chicago Sky 85-66.
And lots of other sports happening too, right?
Yeah.
Baseball, college sports, volleyball.
Yep, MLB, NCAA events, international volleyball. The Saints are in minicamp for the NFL season, and the U.S. Open of Golf is on right now. Very busy time in sports.
Definitely covered all the bases. All right, finally today, let's touch on a couple of items from culture and society. A scary incident on a flight.
Yes, a Spirit Airlines flight, Detroit to Los Angeles. There was a false bomb threat called in.
Oh, wow. What happened?
It seems a passenger who actually arrived late for boarding was later arrested by the FBI. They suspect that person made the call. Caused a huge scare for everyone on the plane, obviously.
Absolutely terrifying for those passengers.
Truly.
And in Texas, some controversial legislation being proposed.
Yes, 2 proposals are drawing a lot of attention and debate. One aims to ban LGBTQ plus student clubs in schools.
Okay. And the other?
The other would require public schools to display the 10 Commandments.
Right. Both of those sound like they would generate significant pushback.
They are. Reports mention considerable debate and criticism. Critics are voicing concerns about, well, a potential theocratic direction or at least a strong conservative shift affecting public institutions.
A complicated situation there for sure.
Very much so, touching on really fundamental issues.
And one more from Texas El Paso. Concerns about school closures.
Yes. The reason cited is a lack of state funding. And the community is worried, understandably, about losing not just schools, but places that hold part of their history.
That's always tough, losing institutions that are part of the community's fabric.
It is regrettable, definitely has a deep impact beyond just the buildings themselves.
Well, we've covered a huge range today, from those intense political standoffs and widespread protests here in the U.S. to global economic jitters, AI's rapid rise, sports, and these complex cultural moments.
It really paints a picture of a lot of simultaneous pressures and changes happening.
It does. So as we wrap up, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. When you consider the political friction we discussed, the scale of the protests across the country, and these debates over fundamental values playing out in places like Texas, what does all this together suggest about the current state of public conversation and perhaps division in society today? Just some food for thought.
Definitely something to ponder.
That was our news briefs for today.